What's up guys, Heatfireash here, and today I'm bringing you a video on the deck I got to Legend with this season, and that is Highlander Hunter. I know it's late in the season, I didn't really play a ton this month, but I learned so much from just playing this deck and just analyzing my plays and finding sort of where I went wrong or where I went right in different games, and I think that can really be a help to a lot of people. So this deck right here, it's basically a pretty standard Highlander Hunter deck. We're all in on the dragon package, of course, with stuff like Corrosive Breath. And yeah, Rot Nest is crazy. So pretty standard deck. Of course, there'll be a deck code in the description if you guys want to try out this deck. I definitely recommend it. It's really good against most of the field right now. The only thing I would say is kind of a downside is there's a lot of them right now, and the mirror match can be pretty difficult. But I picked out 2 games I wanted to show you guys and just kind of explain to you how finding your goal in a certain game can lead to you winning the game, or you know, not winning the game if you don't find that goal, or if you just make a big misplay. So we're gonna go over 2 games, show you that. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and learn a lot. Please hit that subscribe button if you enjoy the video, and follow me on Twitch for any Twitch streams that might be coming up. Let's get into the games. So first game here, we are gonna be up against Warrior, which usually is actually a pretty good matchup for Hunter, but as you'll see here, I made some pretty big mistakes, which caused me to lose the game. And I think definitely analyzing your mistakes can help you get better at the game. And hopefully you guys can learn something from this game, just as I did from reviewing it. So here, pretty easy. Imprisoned Felmaw is a good keep. Pretty good at applying pressure if it comes down a little later. It's hard for most decks to deal with. The rest of our hand here doesn't look too good, but there was nothing else we wanted to keep in our hand. So basically, we're going to have a turn 2 play, and hopefully our opponent doesn't have a turn 1 play. We have no 1-drop, so not much we can really do here. And as you'll see, our opponent does have a turn 1 play. They have the Scalerider, but nothing too big to worry about. We're definitely just going to be jamming the Felmaw here. We do get the Scavenger's Ingenuity, but I definitely want to get the Felmaw out here, start getting something on the board, even if it's going to take a couple turns, because if we have to wait, do nothing, and then play a Felmaw next turn, it's not really going to be too good. And our opponent just plays a Corsair Cache, so they're not really developing either, but they do have a weapon that we're going to have to deal with. Luckily, none of their weapons can really deal with the Felmaw, so jam the Animal Companion here just to get stats on the board. Any of the 3 Animal Companions is pretty good in this situation. He can't trade on board with any of them, so this is probably the worst one to get, but it's honestly still fine. He's going to take 2 and then trade his minion in, and then we get a free Felmaw to face, which is definitely okay. So it could have been a better outcome there, but this is completely fine. So on this turn, we definitely have a couple options. We're getting our 5 damage in the face there, which is great. So now we have so many 2-drops here. We have a lot we can do. He's got the Livewire Lance. He's going to be able to deal with a Faerie Dragon. But if we're forcing him to deal with Faerie Dragon with the Lance, then he probably can't kill the Felmaw. It's going to be a little bit difficult. So I go ahead and grab a Rush minion so I have something to do next turn, in case he plays something that I want to deal with, like an Armor Smith or something like that. And here I definitely think that Faerie Dragon is going to be the best play, because like I said, it's another threat. He can just clear it off with his weapon, but then our Felmaw basically is going to get through. He needs to have like exactly either 2 of the damage lackeys or the rush lackey is like kind of the only way he can really deal with this Felmaw. So we're going to pray that he doesn't have that, but it's not that likely. He's only got 2 lackeys to deal with. So go ahead, play the Faerie Dragon here. This is a pretty nice board. 2 minions he's got to deal with. And we're definitely just don't want to see those 2 lackeys. It's kind of the only thing. And at this point, I'm like, wow, he's going to attack into Felmaw. That's 5 to face. Like, if he actually does that, I'm pretty happy. And he does. So I figure he's either got a Risky Skipper here or, okay, so the Warmaul Challenger. Clears it up pretty nice, but he did take an extra 5 damage. So he's already pretty low on health, and he leaves up the Faerie Dragon, which means we have a lot of options for next turn. I'm already thinking about probably using Diving Gryphon to deal with that Warmaul Challenger. I don't want to see him use Rampage on it. If he does use Rampage, it's going to be quite a big boy. It's going to be hard to deal with. and could just overtake the game. So I definitely like the Diving Gryphon at first. I guess I could like, I don't know, Big Whelp and just go face, but he can just kind of trade on board pretty easily if he has Rampage. So I don't really like that play too much. I definitely think Diving Gryphon's pretty good. Freezing Trap is like not great because you can just ram the lackey and play around it. So what I end up going for is Diving Gryphon, the Wormhole Challenger, and then I play Snake Trap, and I believe I go face with the Faerie Dragon, which it pushes damage, which I like. The only thing is it's not good against Risky Skipper, especially Snake Trap. So there might be a reasoning for playing the Freezing Trap here instead of Snake Trap. But if he doesn't have Risky Skipper, Snake Trap is just so much value. It's just so good. So I think it's worth the risk here. And I don't see Hero Power being the right play. So it is pretty likely he has a Risky Skipper, but he hasn't played Anchor yet, so maybe he doesn't. And it's possible that Freezing Trap could make one of my guys live if he can't have like a humongous Risky Skipper turn. But I just go ahead and get the damage, play the Snake Trap, and hope he doesn't have Risky Skipper here. But let's go ahead and see what he does. He's still got the 1 Lance, 2 Lackeys. Or I guess actually 1 Lackey because he played the Draconic Lackey there. So this turn we're definitely way up on board. He's got to deal with that Gryphon though. 6 damage is something he cannot take. Definitely cannot take that. I'm thinking maybe he might go for a Brute here. He might like attack in, go for a Brute or something. Not sure 100% what they might be going for, but I think Risky Skipper is pretty likely, and it clears up the board so well. And my only hope is that he somehow misplays and doesn't attack first, but he uses a coin, which I think is interesting because I feel like he would have just Risky Skippered first. So I'm not sure, but he goes for an attack here, which I'm like, okay, sweet. He's gonna take 3 damage, which I figured he would probably just clear my board without taking damage. So it puts him at 12. And then he goes ahead and makes another attack here. So I'm like, awesome. No Risky Skipper. He plays the Evasive Worm, which honestly is pretty good here, but Risky Skipper was way worse. So honestly, Rot Nest is basically a perfect top deck. I could also Varanus, trade one in and attack, but I think Rot Nest is just too good here. Plus I push an extra damage. So I am so far up on board, and honestly, this game seems like impossible for me to lose, right? Well, unfortunately, misplays definitely have a big effect on the game. So Risky Skipper here into Armorsmith, clears up my snakes, gains him some armor, and then he goes and does an Inner Rage here just to gain even more armor. So this turn was a pretty weird one for me. There are so many options here, but I don't think I picked the right one. I think probably just jamming Zixer was probably better, but I don't know. It's really hard to say. The problem is with the play I made, he ended up gaining a lot more armor off this Armorsmith than he would have. But honestly, I took the risk with Dragonbane here. If Dragonbane hits the Armorsmith, or even goes face, we're in like a pretty good spot, honestly. And this played for a chance to win. So while I think this might have been a misplay, we had a chance to win the game here, right? We actually had a chance to win the game. 33% chance. So we hit the Risky Skipper, which is the worst one possible. So that's unfortunate. And then I chose to go face here, and I think this was a mistake. You know, the Armorsmith is going to be problematic. I put him at 6, but he's going to gain so much armor here, and that's really the issue. It's basically guaranteed that he's going to be getting another Risky Skipper. He's got the Anchor to draw again, and as you'll see, he does get it. Now, it's possible he didn't get it, right? He could have gotten the other Pirate from his deck, but he does get it, and he just has such a nice trade here, which he would have had anyway, but this is just gaining him extra armor, as you'll see. So he's going to go ahead and gain 3 armor that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Actually, 4 armor, I believe. So it's a bit of a tricky turn here, but I'm just thinking if I didn't trade It would have been maybe a different outcome here. And I get a little bit unlucky with the bomb. It does hit my Dragonbane. And so now we are basically in not a great spot. Our opponent just gained 13 armor in one turn. They still have an armor smith we have to deal with. And we just don't have much to do here. So Zixer is basically going to be what we have to do. We have to get rid of that armor smith and get rid of all their healing. And beyond that, I mean, Face Stalker's not really going to do much. We already used our snake trap. And there's no other secrets in the deck, so we just jam the big old whelp here and get a draw. Faceless Corruptor will be nice in the future. So although our opponent's back at 20 health, which is quite hard to deal with, we are in a bit of a spot where they can come back pretty easily here, depending on what's in their hand. And yeah, they have Deathwing here, which is perfect answer for our board. And a little bit scary. We do have an answer for it, but honestly 12 damage is such a huge threat that we have to trade off. He's still at 20 life. We're at 16. There's no way. He has a lot of face damage as well with Korkrons, probably even Grom, so there's no way we ever let that live. So our only option here really is Face Stalker and Faceless Corruptor. I guess we could have Varanus and Corrosive Breath. That leaves it with a bigger minion on board. But then our Corrosive Breath is not getting any face damage, and I think we need as much face damage as we can. But right here, I believe I just made a straight-up misplay, and it would have been quite a different game if I did not do this. I go ahead for hero power here, and I should have played the freezing trap. And you'll see here, this is such just a perfect turn for him to play his brute. And freezing trap just protects the Faceless Corruptor so well that there's no way that 2 damage to his face was worth not playing the freezing trap. As you'll see here, he basically just ends his turn if he does that against the freezing trap. And in this case, he plays the lackey and gets a 9-5. So at this point, the game is basically over. I can't really deal with that thing. I can Varanus, but it really doesn't do anything because the Corrosive Breath clears it, but then he just gets the taunt minion. So I honestly think just the freezing trap there was just a huge misplay, and that likely the game is completely different. I mean, if he ends his turn, I end with a 4-4, I play a 5-4, and then I'm able to hero power, get him down for another 4 damage. I mean, I'm in such a better position. I'm not saying I would have won the game, but I definitely think not playing the freezing trap just didn't play to my end goal in the game, which is pressuring him and trying to just put him on the back foot. And by making the play that I did, it definitely didn't do that. And like I said, I still had Varanus for any giant taunt min. I don't think he really plays taunts, but I still had the Varanus in hand for something else later. So that was straight up misplay there. And as you can see, it's pretty easy for them to just get 7 damage from hand. And that's a loss right there for just not playing to my goal of keeping a board and being able to whittle them down over the turn. So thinking through a little more that turn, I think it might have turned the game around actually. And in this game, we are going to be up against Rogue, which I do believe is a pretty good matchup for Highlander Hunter. So definitely fine with playing against Rogue here. And as you'll see in this game, we kind of used tempo to be able to leverage ourselves into a good position, which is kind of how you beat Rogue. So first off in the mulligan here, definitely 5-drops are not looking too good. Rottennest Drake is a very powerful card, and I would maybe consider keeping it in if I had like a 1 or 2 drop, maybe. But I decided to go for it anyway and just kind of risk it here because it is just so powerful. Even though it's a bit risky because we didn't have a 1 or a 2 drop. But we do pick up the Felmaw, which is great, and our opponent go ahead and plays out the 3-1 stealth, which is a card that I'm very scared of. It deals so much damage very quickly if we can't deal with it. Not to mention, I don't really have much that can deal 1 damage besides Unleash the Hounds. So we take 3 damage from it, and 1 more turn, our Felmaw will be coming out, which is good. And in this turn, it's basically between just slamming the Faerie Dragon, which will just die to the 3/1, or going with the Diving Gryphon here. And I actually choose to get rid of the 3/1 with the Diving Gryphon because not only does it draw me a rush minion that I can play on another turn, but it kind of takes pressure off the board because a 1/3 is not really very pressuring. And we're going to have a 5/4 Felmaw next turn. So, and a lot of times Rogue doesn't have many plays if there's not like a board. You know, maybe they can like Evil Miscreant or something like that. But largely they don't have a ton of plays to like build up a board. So I feel like here, Diving Gryphon trading with the 3/1, even though it seems weird, it really kind of puts the board more in my favor and hopefully leaves them with some dead cards, at least for 1 turn in their hand. And then we'll have that Felmaw coming live on our turn. Maybe trading with something or just hitting for 5 damage, and then we can start building our board back up. And we pick up the Faceless Corruptor here, which hopefully will be pretty powerful later down the line if we can get some like 1/1s or something. So this is like the full stealth build, so go ahead and play that 3/3 and get draw here and have their 1/3. So neither of these minions deal with my 5/4 at all. So, and it goes face, which it's fine. I would have rather had it probably trade, but that's okay. And then we have some options here. Faerie Dragon, we could Sharpshooter, but it doesn't really deal with anything. Hero Power. So there's nothing crazy we can do here, but we do have the 5/4, which is kind of like our mainstay right now. He has to full trade his board to clear it, unless he has something like a Seal Fate or a Backstab. So go ahead and play Faerie Dragon and Sharpshooter here, actually, instead of Hero Power, just to build up the board. And I should have tracking first on this turn, but we end up taking the Bran here because although Zephrys is super, super strong, in this matchup, Bran can literally just win you the game because of its high damage. And usually, like, they can't really deal with a King Crush very well outside of, like, Flick. That's kind of the only card that deals with King Crush. So we see the Seal Fate come out, which is kind of what my opponent needed to trade off there. And they do get the card draw, and then I do believe, so they actually make the value trade, which is fine, and then they transform it, and they get a low roll here, which is good for me. Did not want to see a crazy big minion or a taunt or something there, so that's pretty sweet. So we have a couple different plays here that we can do. There's a Faceless Corruptor play possible. There's also maybe a value trade into the 1/1, play the big old whelp. Could also value trade and then throw down the Rottnest Drake. There's a lot of options here. And what I end up going for is the Rottnest Drake and trade play because this puts me up on the board. We still have a 3/1, which likely they're going to have to Hero Power in and take the 3 damage. And then a 6/5, once again, pretty hard for them to deal with without a Seal Fate or a Backstab. Or they could also coin Flick if they wanted to. And if they do that, we're going to be left with our 3/1, and we have a Faceless Corruptor that we can easily deal with Flick on the next turn. So I feel like the Rottnest is pretty good. Not to mention, if they can't deal with it, we can Dragonbane plus Hero Power on the next turn, which is going to really push us forward in the health standpoint. So, and I'm kind of taking my sweet old time here, but we do make the trade and get the Rottnest Drake out, clearing off the board. And big tempo play. We're way up on board here. So let's go ahead and see what my opponent Rogue player does in this situation. Of course, they have a ton of cards in their hand, but they're all cards from their deck, so nothing really randomly generated here. We see a Pharaoh Cat come out, so they could get a pretty good Reborn card, possibly. We'll see what they end up going for here. And they go ahead and play the Bone Wraith, and they did have a Backstab, but unfortunately they don't have enough to trade off on our minions. So we have ourselves another interesting turn here. Bone Wraith is going to be hard for us to clear off. We can do it, but we're going to be losing our Faerie Dragon. So don't know how great of a play that is. They still have the 1/2, so I don't know if I really want to Dragonbane, because we're not going to be guaranteed face if we do Dragonbane this turn after trading. Not to mention our Rottnest will be at a 6/1, so it's pretty liable just to get destroyed by that Pharaoh Cat. Another option is trading into the Bone Wraith with Rot Nest and then going with Faceless Corruptor on our Faerie Dragon and just trading off the minions. That kind of leaves us with a 4-3, a 4-2, and a 6-1. And that's actually the play I end up going with. I think it's very strong. Once again, we're up completely on board. My opponent's board is empty. Going into turn 6, the only card that deals with it pretty well is going to be Flick again, which they might have played last turn. So I'm under the assumption that they don't have Flick, but even if they do, I'm not that worried because we can trade and then we can still go for that Dino Tamer brand and just hit him in the face with King Crush. So trade off, go with the Faceless Corruptor, double trade, and then our board's looking pretty good. There's no really AoE from Rogue at all, so we don't have to worry about that. And there is a ton of damage on board right now, so they have to be playing some lackeys or something to try to like whittle down our board if they can. So let's see what they have in store for this turn. Like I said, I really think leveraging the board and honestly damaging your minions against Rogue is pretty good because they can't backstab or seal fate, which is some of their most important removal cards. The only other one they usually play is Eviscerate, so they can still do that on this turn, but no backstab or seal fates, which is going to be make it just a little bit harder for them to deal with this board. So Galakron comes out, or the Shield of Galakron, so that's going to be kind of in the way here. So pretty strong, and it deals with these Faceless Corruptors really, really nicely, unfortunately for me. So good play by my opponent here. And then we see a Spy Mistress. They're just kind of building up the board at this point, and a Kobold Lackey to take away my 6-1. So really good reactive play by my opponent. Doesn't look too great to me. So we could just go ahead and go for Dino Tamer Bran, value trade with King Crush, hit for 8. That is one option. The only thing I don't like about that is on board, then they can just trade. They can just trade out the King Crush, so I'm not crazy about that play. So what I end up really doing here is going for Stormhammer, trading into the Shield of Galakron with one Faceless Corruptor and the weapon, and then playing the Bone Wraith, because my opponent cannot deal with Bone Wraith on board. So it's going to be clearing up his board, and he needs something else, another backstab or something to deal with the Bone Wraith. Not only that, but I also develop the Stormhammer so we can hopefully get some extra damage in later. And we also keep our one Faceless Corruptor alive and kind of protect it with the Bone Wraith. So hopefully we can get extra damage in with that. So I think this is a strong play. Once again, maintaining the board, keeping pressure on our opponent so that they're on the back foot is really, really important in the Rogue matchup. If you're ever off board and they start pressuring you and you've lost all tempo, you're going to lose because it's impossible, pretty much impossible to like build up tempo from a losing point against Rogue because they have such good tempo tools. So there's the play. We put them at 21. We got our Bone Wraith that's really good against their board and still a 4-3 plus a weapon. So we're in a pretty good spot here. Now my opponent could have Galakron here, but they only invoked twice, which means that their plays from that are not going to be incredibly broken. The 5 life is not really going to matter, and they don't get the weapon, so Galakron not too good for my opponent here. They do have the backstab, though, which means they can trade through this Bone Wraith, but they are going to need something else to deal with this Faceless Corruptor. So we see Miscreant come down, so they could definitely have some lackeys here that could deal with our board. And like I said about Rogue being just super reactive, is like, as you can see, we had a pretty strong board, but they have so many low-cost cards that can really, really kind of bring the tempo back in their favor. So they are looking for a spell here, something to clear up the board, and here's a Van Cleef. So this is an important turn. An 8-8 normally is something you'd want to clear up, but in our case here, we have to kill our opponent. We cannot sit around trading with an 8-8. We have no good trades into it, and at this point, you have to realize you got to race your opponent. We have Bran in our hand, we have a weapon, we have our hero power that's better than them at racing, so we're going to choose the race here, and we do not want to trade. So that's what I was talking about when you have to pick your goal and go for it. Our goal is to race them. So we play Animal Companion and we get the boar, which is honestly the best one we could have gotten in this situation. And we play Big Old Whelp just so we can get the extra charge of the weapon. And we're going to go ahead and hit our opponent for 8 plus 3, 11 damage there, putting them at 10, which means that next turn our Dino Tamer Brand plus Hero Power will put them on lethal, which is super great. That's even if our weapon doesn't get through. Potentially, we could still use the weapon to trade with a taunt minion if they do play that. But our opponent's going to go try to generate some random spells just to deal with our board here somehow. I'm not really sure what they're looking for. Maybe another backstab or something to deal with the Huffer. But having the 5/5 is going to be difficult for them to deal with as well, just because they're going to have to trade into it. And likely, we're at such a health total that they have to deal with our board. They can't pressure us. We have the aggressiveness on our side right now. And that's really why you wanted to leverage just damage when you can. It's often can be tricky to see something like an 8/8 Edwin and be really scared of it, like, whoa, I have to deal with that. But sometimes you just have to realize that the way you win the game is attacking them in face. You're not going to be able to trade with them the whole game. So Betrayal, really good spell actually for my opponent. Clears pretty well, lets him clear off the board. But looking for us, we do have the Dino Tamer brand plus hero power, and we actually have plenty damage for over lethal here. Hopefully that gives you guys a good example of how you find your goal in a game, in this case being aggressive and out-tempoing our opponent, out-racing them, and how you can use that to win the game.